right, you shitheads, welcome to another deep dive. You ever heard of Rolling Stone?
Who the fuck hasn't?
Well, hold your goddamn horses. I'm not talking about some Wikipedia-ass history lesson here. We're going full-on gonzo, ripping the lid off this motherfucker.
Sounds right up my alley.
Damn right it is. We're talking covers that would make a nun piss herself, journalistic fuck-ups that would make your head spin faster than a crackhead at a rave, and the whole goddamn evolution. From hippie rag to, well, who the fuck knows what it is now?
It's like watching a goddamn train wreck, you know?
Wow.
A beautiful, messy, explosive train wreck.
Exactly. So let's rewind the clock back to, what was it, like 67?
67, yeah.
San Francisco, a shit ton of hippies, LSD flowing like cheap beer, and this dude, a nun winner, decides, hey, let's start a goddamn magazine.
The dude had balls, I'll give him that.
No shit. He teams up with Ralph J. Gleason, and they birthed this newspaper-looking thing called Rolling Stone. It's supposed to be all about rock and roll, man, but these motherfuckers weren't afraid to stick their noses into politics and all that counterculture bullshit.
And let's not forget Hunter S. Thompson, the king of gonzo journalism. Rolling Stone was the only place crazy enough to publish that madman shit. I mean, Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, that's a whole other level of fucked up.
For real. But here's the thing. Rolling Stone was walking a tightrope, man. On one side, you had those hardcore underground newspapers, the ones calling for revolution and shit. On the other, you had the mainstream press sucking the government's dick.
And Rolling Stone was right there in the middle, straddling the line.
Yeah, like a goddamn stripper doing the splits, giving the finger to the squares while still wearing a goddamn tie. But then the 80s rolled around, and shit started to change.
Things got a little more corporate.
You think? It's like they traded their tie-dye for a goddamn Armani suit. More celebrities, more movies, less of the raw, gritty stuff. More fluff, less bite. What the fuck happened?
It's the age-old dilemma, man. Sell out or fade away. They wanted to stay alive, so they had to evolve, appeal to a wider audience.
So basically, they sold their souls for a bigger paycheck.
You could say that. But hey, they still knew how to grab your attention, right? Those iconic covers, John Lennon and Yoko Ono buck naked, the Beatles, Hendrix, they weren't afraid to push boundaries.
Yeah, those covers were like a punch in the face. You couldn't ignore them. And get this. For their 1000th issue, they blew $1 million on a goddamn hologram cover.
$1 million for a hologram?
$1 million for a fucking hologram. Talk about having more money than sense. But even with all the fancy shit, they couldn't escape the goddamn internet tidal wave.
The internet changed everything, man. Newspapers, magazines, everyone was scrambling to adapt.
And Rolling Stone was no exception. They launched a website, put their archives online, even started a video game magazine called Glixel.
Glixel!
Yeah, Glixel. What a clusterfuck. And then, of course, there are the controversies.
Oh, the controversy.
Like that time they put the Boston bomber, that asshat Jakart Tsarnaev, on the goddamn cover. Talk about a PR nightmare.
That was a major fuck-up. They tried to play it off as some kind of deep dive into the mind of a terrorist, but it backfired spectacularly.
Yeah, people were pissed. And rightfully so. But that wasn't their only blunder. Let's talk about a rape on campus. That article about the supposed gang rape at UVA.
Yes, the UVA debacle. A classic example of how not to do journalism.
Break it down for us. How the fuck did they manage to screw up so badly?
They basically took the accuser's story at face value, didn't do any real fact-checking, and ran with it. They got sued, lost a ton of credibility, and basically handed their critics a giant I told you so moment.
It was like watching a slow-motion train wreck. But you gotta admit, those bastards always knew how to stir up shit. Remember the El Chapo interview? Sean Penn, a goddamn actor, interviewing a wanted drug lord?
The El Chapo interview was something else. It raised a lot of ethical questions, for sure.
It was like they were trying to outdo themselves with each new fuck-up. And then, just when you thought it couldn't get any worse, they ran that bullshit story about ivermectin overdoses overwhelming Oklahoma hospitals.
That was, not their finest hour.
So after all that, the counterculture beginnings, the shift to pop culture, the scandals, the internet struggles, where the fuck does that leave Rolling Stone? Are they even relevant anymore?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? They've left their mark on American culture, that's for sure. But whether they can survive in this new world...
Yeah, whether they can adapt, evolve, and stay true to their roots while still appealing to a new generation, who the fuck knows?
Only time will tell. But it's going to be one hell of a ride. All right, so we've ripped Rolling Stone a new asshole for their fuck-ups.
Yeah.
But let's give credit where credit is due.
What you trying to say?
Those bastards have always had a knack for spotting what's cool.
Yeah, like that hot issue thing they do every year.
Exactly. That shit's been a goddamn institution for decades.
It's like their way of telling the world, hey, here are the people you should be worshiping you. Plebs.
Something like that.
But it's more than just being tastemakers, right? I mean, Rolling Stone, they've landed some legendary interviews.
Oh, yeah, some of the biggest names in the game.
John Lennon,
Yeah.
Bob Dylan.
Even Obama talked to them.
Obama.
It's crazy.
Crazy.
And those weren't just some fluffy celebrity bullshit interviews.
No.
These were deep dives, man, into the minds of some of the most influential figures of our time.
Like therapy sessions with rock stars and presidents.
Exactly. They talked about music, politics, culture, everything that mattered.
It's like they were capturing a moment in history.
Yeah, like a time capsule filled with sex, drugs, and rock and roll.
Speaking of fucked up shit, remember that article they ran about bug chasers?
Oh, God, yeah.
Those assholes, those mostly gay men who are like intentionally trying to get infected with HIV.
Yeah, that was a dark time.
What the fuck were they thinking publishing that shit?
I mean, looking back, it's clear they were just trying to be edgy and controversial.
Yeah, well, they succeeded.
But at what cost, right?
Exactly.
They ended up exploiting a vulnerable community and spreading misinformation.
And speaking of spreading misinformation, what about that anti-vaccine article by Robert F. Kennedy Jr.?
Oh, yeah, that was a whole other level of bullshit.
Giving a platform to a goddamn lunatic.
Seriously, it's like they completely lost their journalistic integrity.
They were so busy trying to be provocative, they forgot about the basics of responsible reporting.
Yeah, facts don't matter when you're chasing clicks.
Right.
But let's not forget that Rolling Stone wasn't always afraid to get political.
True.
Back in the day, they were covering protests, the Vietnam War, the whole counterculture movement.
They were pissing off the establishment left and right.
And they had Hunter S. Thompson, that gonzo journalist extraordinaire.
Oh, yeah, good old Hunter.
Running around like a bat out of hell, writing about everything from the Hells Angels to the presidential election.
The dude was a legend.
A goddamn legend.
He was like a one-man wrecking crew tearing down the walls of conventional journalism.
And making everyone uncomfortable along the way.
Exactly.
But even with all the politics, Rolling Stone was always about more than just ideology.
Yeah, they were documenting a whole generation.
They were chronicling the cultural shifts, the music, the fashion, the whole goddamn tapestry of American life, warts and all.
They captured the spirit of their times. The good, the bad, and the ugly.
Precisely.
So after all this, the scandals, the fuck-ups, the questionable decisions, do they still matter?
You mean, does a magazine that once challenged the establishment,
Yeah.
can it become part of the establishment itself and still have an impact?
That's the question.
It's a tough one.
It is.
I mean, Rolling Stone's future is uncertain.
No doubt.
They're trying to find their footing in a world that's changed drastically since 1967.
The internet, social media, the 24/7 news cycle, it's a whole new ballgame.
And the rules have changed.
For sure.
They're not the only game in town anymore,
Nope.
but they've got a legacy, a name that still carries weight.
True.
The question is, can they evolve, adapt, and stay true to their roots while navigating this new media landscape?
Can they recapture the magic that made them so influential in the first place?
Or are they destined to become a footnote in the history of rock and roll journalism?
We'll have to wait and see.
One thing's for sure, Rolling Stone has given us one hell of a ride.
Amen to that, brother. All right, you fuckers, we're back for the final round. We've praised Rolling Stone. We've shit on Rolling Stone.
We've pretty much covered it all.
So let's cut to the chase. Does this old dinosaur still have any bite?
Can they still shape culture, or are they just jerking off to their past glory?
That's the million-dollar question, ain't it? They've been through some shit. The UVA mess, the Boston Bomber cover, that whole El Chapo fiasco.
Yeah, it's enough to make you want to crawl into a hole and die.
And let's not forget, the whole print media landscape is a goddamn graveyard these days.
True, but they're still alive, right?
They're still kicking. They got the website, the international editions. Hell, they're even throwing festivals now.
So they're diversifying, branching out.
Trying to stay afloat.
Exactly.
But are they just grasping at straws? Or is there some master plan to make Rolling Stone relevant to a generation that wouldn't know Jan Wenner from Adam?
It's a gamble, for sure, but they do have a few things going for them.
Like what?
Well, first off, the name still means something. It represents a history, a legacy of rebellion and cultural impact. They just got to figure out how to make that shit resonate with today's audience.
Okay, so name recognition. What else?
Second, they've got a treasure trove of content. All those iconic interviews, groundbreaking articles, controversial covers. They can repurpose that shit, give it a fresh coat of paint, and use it to hook a new generation.
So basically remind everyone why Rolling Stone was a goddamn cultural force to begin with.
Exactly. Show them they weren't always a bunch of washed-up clickbait whores.
And third,
They still have some talented writers and editors. They're bringing in fresh blood, people who get today's world, who can create content that actually speaks to younger audiences.
Mixing it up, old school meets new school. But
Yeah.
let's be real. Can Rolling Stone really shake off the stink of those scandals? Can they convince people they're more than just a clickbait factory desperate for attention?
That's the challenge, isn't it? They have to prove they're still committed to quality journalism, to telling stories that matter. They can't just be about chasing trends and generating buzz. They have to stand for something.
So after all this, why the fuck should anyone care about the fate of a magazine that's been around longer than most of our listeners have been alive?
Because Rolling Stone is more than just a magazine. It's a cultural institution that's shaped how we think about music, politics, and art. It's a reminder that media has the power to influence, to inform, to inspire. Whether they succeed or fail in this new world, their story is a cautionary tale about the responsibility that comes with that power.
Well, shit. That's deep, man. All right, you degenerates. That's our deep dive into Rolling Stone, a magazine that's been a voice of rebellion, a chronicler of culture, and, yeah, a constant source of controversy. Whether they can adapt and survive is anyone's guess, but one thing's for sure, their story is far from over. And on that note, we're out of here. Go fuck yourselves.